guys, welcome to the Liberal Hive Mind, a channel solely focused on exposing the abundant hypocrisy of the left. The same old trend, the same old thing. We're always the bad guys, we're always the ones dealing in conspiracy theories, we're always the ones that are lying and pushing crazy, kooky talking points. That tends to be the narrative, that if we're the crazy ones, the other side, the left-wing side that's constantly lecturing us and looking down at us, always end up slowly, eventually, saying the exact same things that we're saying. Why is it that time always proves us right, yet each and every single time, time after time, we're always the nutcases? You would think at this point that after being right on so many issues, after hitting the nail on the head so square, a flush, perfect strike, a critical strike, you would think after this track record that we've developed, especially over the last couple of years, that we would get a little bit of the benefit of the doubt, no? No, of course not. It's the same old trend of denial, fighting, delusion, ad hominem attacks and slanderous labels being slapped onto us, and then just wait, 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, 24 months later, left-wingers who criticized us initially are now saying the exact same thing. They always end up coming to our realization a year, 2 years later, and then they want praise for it. Then all of a sudden, they're trailblazers. They're ideological thought leaders. No, you're slow, you're late to the party, and here you are saying what we've been saying since day one. Now all of a sudden, CNN is criticizing the Alvin Bragg case. Give me a frickin' break. And not only are they 2 years late on this one, they're actually almost 8 years late. Considering this Stormy Daniels saga started back in 2017, maybe 2018, so let's call it 6.5 years late. They've been pushing this nonsense story forever. They know that the FEC essentially dropped the case, that there was no there, but they pursued it anyways. Up until, last month they were telling us how Donald Trump's in big trouble, big spooky trouble, and Alvin Bragg is on the case. And now all of a sudden, they're realizing that the whole thing is backfiring, and so it seems as though they're having a little bit of a panic attack on CNN live on air. Let me show you guys exactly what's going on. We've got some stuff to get into, so let's roll the tape. All right, so here we go again. They should have heeded our warnings since the start. We actually gave them the blueprint. We gave them the battle plan. All they had to do was not indict Donald Trump. Who was it? I think Chris Rock told them very clearly in very explicit terms, do not do it. You're going to turn him into Tupac, into a legend, into a martyr.
Before I start, talk about Adam, the CNN people. You guys really gonna arrest Trump? Do you know this is only going to make him more popular? It's like arresting Tupac. He's just gonna sell more records. Are you stupid?
Chris Rock told them, and we've been telling them, that all their witch hunts lead to Donald Trump spiking in the polls, especially when the case is obviously corrupt and lacking clear substance. But they didn't want to listen, even though their opponents were telling them exactly what they needed to do if they wanted to secure the next election in the bag. Well, now here they are, too little, too late, as per usual, realizing what's been going on.
That you're a voter, okay, and you're hearing this stuff. It might actually be just like a fundamental issue of fairness. It doesn't seem fair that Donald Trump's not allowed to criticize him when he's constantly throwing punches at him.
Well, the voters that we talk to obviously don't really care about this case. I cover Donald Trump and I go to his rallies, so no one there is, up in arms.
Do they even know he's on trial?
They do know he's on trial, but they think it's unfair. And I will tell you that this case going first, one of the interesting conversations I had with someone who worked for the Trump administration, was very close to Donald Trump, actually no longer has any ties with him, told me that this case going first made him want to put a MAGA flag in his front yard because he felt like it was unfair. And that's really the sentiment when you go to these rallies.
Jake Tapper, this guy is one of the most vengeful partisan hacks in the media. I know he's like Wolf Blitzer. He presents himself as a neutral arbiter of truth and basic information. He's just giving it to you straight up. This is the guy who went to journalism school, yada, yada, yada. Give me a frickin' break. The guy's the biggest hack ever, and now even he is realizing that this whole thing is a joke. Quote, you're a voter. That doesn't seem fair that Trump's not allowed to criticize Cohen when he's constantly throwing punches at him. Yeah, that's what we've been saying from the start. But for the last couple of months, all of these Democrat hacks in the media have been supporting these gag orders. I keep playing the same clip. Remember Nicole Wallace crying about how Donald Trump is inciting violence against the judge's daughter.
So, It's time to do something different. Like, we're not going to have this conversation again. I have come on the air with breaking news about requests for gag orders because of threats for judges and their kids more times than I could count today before I got ready.
She threw a freaking temper tantrum on air, but now they realize that since day one, this gag order has been horribly biased and unconstitutional, especially when Donald Trump has a right. He has a right to speak. As an American citizen, and as somebody being persecuted, they say prosecuted, I say persecuted, tomato, tomato, I guess. As somebody being persecuted by an unjust left-wing rogue DA, he has the right to criticize bias where he sees it. He is defending himself. They want to argue that he's threatening the jury, he's threatening the judge's daughter. No, he's not. Saying somebody is clearly biased, saying somebody is fundraising off of the case is deeply connected with his political opponents, Adam Schiff, Joe Biden, the DNC at large. It seems like a valid point of bias. It seems like a valid point of concern and clear conflict of interest. But no, because Donald Trump's saying it, it's incitement of violence and threats. That's what they've been telling us since day one. But now they're realizing that that's not how normal people perceive it. And now all of a sudden they want to back off. Now all of a sudden they've realized the error of their ways. Give me a break. It's the same thing every single time. These Democrats will push and push and push. They'll push something that they know is purposely deceitful. They'll push something that they know is horrifyingly dishonest and disingenuous until it backfires in their face. And then all of a sudden, it's a kumbaya moment, a come to Jesus moment, where obviously this thing is going to be perceived as bias. And it's a bad idea for this case to go forward first, considering how much substance it lacked. Alvin Bragg literally ran off of going after Donald Trump.
I'm the candidate in the race who has the experience with Donald Trump. I was the chief deputy in the Attorney General's office. We sued the Trump administration over 100 times for the Muslim travel ban, for family separation at the border, for shenanigans with the census. So I know how to litigate with him. I also led the team that did the Trump Foundation case.
So did Letitia James.
And what would you say to people who say, oh, I'm not going to bother to register to vote because my voice doesn't make a difference, or I'm just one person?
I say one name, Donald Trump. That should motivate you. You don't vote.
Will you sue him for us?
Oh, we're going to definitely sue him. We're going to be a real pain in the He's going to know my name personally.
I love it. He probably does already.
Obviously something stinks here. The whole case is built off of Stormy Daniels and Michael Cohen, two horrible, greedy liars. And then, of course, the Letitia James case. Don't even get me started with that case. Democrats had a whole lot of options here. At least they thought they did initially. But now they're stuck with these two cases, and they're surprised that it's backfiring. I'm not surprised at all. This is exactly what I've been saying from the start. In terms of all the legal analysis that we've been doing, we've been mostly focused on the fake electors scheme, Fannie Willis's case, then of course the January 6th case and the documents case. Those are the cases that we were hoping would get pushed over with trial dates after the election, not because those cases had substance, but just because, the federal government, Jack Smith, was most likely going to legally railroad Donald Trump throughout the process, or at least we were worried about that. So once those cases got delayed and had their trial dates pushed after the election, I kept saying, well, I guess now they're stuck with the Alvin Bragg and Letitia James case. That's the only thing that can make it ahead of election day. And I wasn't worried about it. In fact, I was celebrating it. The left-wingers did the exact opposite. They dug in, they doubled down, and they celebrated that Alvin Bragg and Letitia James were going to take Donald Trump down. They kept telling us that Donald Trump wasn't pulling any money from fundraising, even though it was the nomination process and he hadn't even been nominated yet. So general election fundraising hadn't even started. They kept telling us Donald Trump is broke and Letitia James is going to put his campaign under. They celebrated that, and they were celebrating Alvin Bragg's case. Donald Trump's going to be behind bars in an orange jumpsuit before the election. That's what they did. And now all of a sudden they're realizing that they might have jumped the gun. Yeah, you think? How incredibly foolish. Who would have thought that indicting a former president and current presidential candidate in the midst of an election season, spearheading all of these cases where no crime had actually been committed, as Alan Dershowitz tells us,
where Donald Trump has been spending all his days. What is the crime?
There is no crime. That's why they're putting on people like Pecker talking about catch and kill. They're putting on McDougal. There's no crime. And, they ought to be very careful about this because the Supreme Court, the appellate court in Albany, just reversed Harvey Weinstein's conviction on the ground that they put in too much information that wasn't really relevant to the case. And that's what's happening. There is no crime in Manhattan. You cannot figure out what the crime is. That's why they're putting on all this evidence of non-crimes, trying to persuade the jury that catch and kill is a crime. It's not. Paying hush money is a crime. It's not. Putting a corporate statement is a misdemeanor barred by the statute of limitations. You can't suddenly resurrect that and turn that into a crime by invoking a federal statute, which the federal government refused to invoke, and the Federal Election Commission refused to invoke. There is no crime. And if it's Donald Trump, they can go after you tomorrow and your relatives tomorrow for something that isn't a crime. That's why every American, whether you're a Democrat, should be opposed to what's going on in that Manhattan courtroom. It's a scandal, and it's a destruction of America's...
And especially in both of these two cases. I mean, as explained by Mr. Dershowitz, but then, of course, the Letitia James element, where nobody was ever defrauded, there was never any damage. The bank was paid back in full, and it was a simple business transaction. Who would have thought attempting to persecute a former president and current presidential candidate on a non-existent crime would have been a bad idea? Well, I could have told you that years ago. I could have told you that 7 years ago, when this whole Stormy Daniels thing started, but apparently leftoids still haven't figured it out. Like I've been saying, folks, this Alvin Bragg case is going nowhere. It's gonna collapse. But even if it doesn't collapse, and somehow Alvin Bragg manages to find Donald Trump guilty, if somehow the jury is so biased that they end up with a guilty verdict, regardless of what happens, I promise you Trump will surge in the polls, and we'll be right back in this position saying I told you so, as the Democrats at CNN once again ring the alarm bells, voicing their criticism and just how much of a bad idea it really was. No Sherlock. Anyways, that's pretty much what I got for you guys. I'll definitely be doing some polling analysis, following up on everything we're seeing. That's what I got for you guys on this one, though. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.